Hello, everybody! Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and all that. Welcome to episode 17, right, of the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast. I am your host, Jolly Dan, and this is my co-host, Happy Rob. I don't know, I'm trying to make it festive, and I'm doing a very shoddy job. But
Oh, everyone.
ho ho ho! Well, yes, this is the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast where we talk about Dungeons and Dragons and all things TTRPG. Please like and subscribe and check out the description below with all our socials to keep up to date with what's going on with us. And obviously make sure you tap that bell to get notifications about when we release new episodes. But we are going to start with a little bit of news, as we so often do. And I wish in this time of year this was going to be merry news, that we were going to have something to celebrate, to be happy. But Hasbro likes to, quote unquote, fuck its employees. So
No.
the news isn't great, and my heart goes out to all of those people that at Dungeons and at Wizards of the Coast that are getting laid off just before Christmas by Hasbro. That is the news, unfortunately, is that Hasbro are firing a lot of people to make up for the loss in their toys department, their toys division. Not, by the way, Dungeons and Dragons, which has been doing essentially year over year more and more profits, year over year better performance. And apparently it's something like their was it the stock price or something? Their whatever's gone up by 40%. Is what I read
Wow.
earlier before with Dungeons and Dragons. So Dungeons and Dragons is more popular than it's ever been, making more money than it's ever been. But of course, it's the Dungeons and Dragons people that are the Wizard of the Coasts, the Magic and the Dungeons and Dragons basic people getting fired. Not the executives who've clearly made a mess of their other divisions.
Well,
Which is quite funny
stand
because the new
still, mate.
CEO only started, I think, last year before, I think 22, so a year before. Well, technically, we're not even in new year yet, but kind of, I think he's 22 or something. He's relatively new CEO, so he's probably just, I don't know how it works, but it's kind of his predecessor's fault, I'm sure, if you ask him. But he's CEO, he's not going to want to take a pay
You
cut.
tend to find that a new CEO sort of once they're 1 or 2 years into the
Mm.
position, they're going to really want to be putting their own
Mm-hmm.
stamp on things. I mean, I won't say where I work for obvious reasons,
Mm-hmm.
but we've also had some redundancies, which I always think is an absolute scummy move to do just before Christmas.
Mm.
So
It's a horrible thing to do,
yeah,
especially being that in this country we have some sort of legal protections with regards to what they can do. And unfortunately, in the US, um, those employees aren't covered by the same protections. But
no.
there's some big some big names from the company being let go. One of them in particular, a name I know of is Mike Merles.
I know
Um,
that.
he's one of the co-leads for Fifth Edition.
Mm.
I think he was like one of the senior guys, had some controversy, so hasn't been at the top for a while. But he was one of the guys I think like alongside like the likes of Jeremy Crawford who were like that instrumental.
Yeah,
Like a lead designer basically. He's been let go. There's been community managers from both. I think I saw a community manager or something from Magic that got let go. I know the what was her title technically? Content creative for D&D Beyond. The woman that basically took over after the dude left. There was a guy there who moved, and I think he works directly with Wizards of the Coast now. He always does the interviews with whenever they do like a new one D&D.
oh
There's a
yeah.
video. The guy that Todd something. I can't remember his surname. I'm terrible with names apparently when it comes to this
I'm
podcast. Normally,
awful with names.
you're awful. Normally, I'm awful. Just apparently when it comes to the podcast.
You say Todd, and my brain just goes Howard,
Yeah,
and
it's
now
not.
that's all I can think
It's a
about.
different
And
one.
I'm like, no, it's not the Skyrim guy.
But essentially, the woman that they had replace, well, I don't know if she was there already, but she's the one who's been doing it. I think she's been let go as well. But
That's
there's
a shame.
there's a whole list of people. Um,
Yeah,
I assume it's across Hasbro entirely, but to punish a almost autonomous division within your organization, like, and I remember reading about at some point there was I don't know if it's an activist or somebody within, I'm sure within a different sphere of thought than the usual consumerist nature of Hasbro.
oh,
But somebody had tried to get Wizards to spin off, to separate from
oh yeah,
Hasbro, but failed. And I bet there's a lot of people probably at Wizards that are now thinking, "Damn it, I wish that had
yeah.
materialized."
I wish I could say I'm surprised by this news. I'm really not. I
I'm not.
expected a
Mm,
little bit. I expected there would be some more long-term fallout
mm,
to um, the creative license fiasco because at the time
mm,
there were very heavy rumors going around that again Hasbro wasn't really doing so well apart from D&D,
mm,
but and that it was felt that D&D was under monetized.
mm,
And we know what's happened in the Magic um, side of
mm.
things. Well, I mean, I don't know if you do, Dan, because I know you've never really had much to do with
No,
it. But
just through you.
although I haven't played it now in a while, I still am part of many groups that talk about it quite often. And
Mm,
there's been so many crossovers. There was the very famous Lord of the Rings crossover.
mm,
There's been Warhammer. There's been D&D crossovers that have received varying degrees of success. I'm sure there's been some other crossovers that I've not really paid as much attention to.
mm,
It just really feels like kind of like trying to squeeze the profits out as much as possible. Because I remember at the time when the license fiasco happened, the comment sections in a lot of the videos and posts about it were always full of Magic players going, "Told you."
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that.
um, there was a lot of that. So it's really not surprising, considering how successful um, or unsuccessful the license fiasco was, than how much of a backlash there
Mm,
was for it. That I was kind of expecting something like
mm.
this to happen at
Well,
some point
a
because they
lot of
recover
people.
the costs
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah, a lot of people in the know don't seem to think it's related anything to that because it didn't actually damage their profit margins. So monetarily, I'm sure there was a dip in that
Yeah,
particular in January, but over the year they've apparently done pretty well. I know the movie didn't do quite as well as Hasbro was hoping. I think they were hoping for something massive, but it didn't materialize. It's a good movie, but
yeah, yeah.
I
It's a
enjoyed
niche
it.
movie still,
But
though.
it's
Like,
yeah, it is. It's funny to us because we know Dungeons and Dragons,
yeah,
and I think a lot of stuff is isn't it's just going to go over the heads of the average audience member. There's a few moments. I always think one of the funnier moments is probably one of the moments that's a bit more universal, which is when they're doing the whole illusion to sneak in at the end,
oh yeah,
and his face starts drooping and all that. It's the
yeah,
idea almost of like lost concentration, and but it's a little more. It's a funnier, silly, goofy moment that I think would be they could have afforded more of those throughout the movie.
yeah.
They would have been better off.
I think, oh yeah, I think the movie was fine. I really enjoyed it, but at the same time, um, I think if they were trying, I mean, this is a different topic really in and of itself, but I think if they were trying to reach a more mainstream audience,
Mm,
they would have been much better off trying to assimilate the kind of theme of the kids playing D&D from Stranger Things that was so successful for what it
mm,
was, and maybe trying to look at that as a movie thing. I've no idea what they would have done, how they would have done it. Making movies is not my job.
no,
But they
no.
had a lot of like um,
Strange.
symbiotic success through the Stranger
Yeah,
Things
Stranger
franchise.
Things. Yeah.
Without it.
My thing with yeah, I think I would have liked the movie even less had it been essentially kids around the table and then you would have been filming their adventure.
Yeah,
I think there would have been a certain charm with it, but it would have appealed to my sensibilities less.
yeah.
to a
I would have
greater
liked
audience. I have no like they could have gone in for the family audience far more.
it. Yeah.
It is a family movie. I don't. It is definitely a family movie, but I think they could have definitely leaned on that more. And if they wanted to make the money, they should have done that. I mean, I liked it, but I don't think they saw don't think Hasbro saw the success they wanted, and are just laying off. I think a lot of people across the not just
Yeah.
Wizards, but across Hasbro itself, across the entire
Well, that's it. Yeah.
organization. So, and it's a horrible time of year, and it feels I feel awful for those people, especially because if you are in that toy division, it's the time of year where everyone's buying your toys. But I think I'm not a business guy. I don't know if I can even comment, but I think Hasbro might just be lagging behind the times a bit. Um, we've only now
Probably.
just got really a good D&D game. We've had D&D games for a long time. You've always had your named after the city. No,
Oh,
Neverwinter
yeah,
games.
Neverwinter games.
And you've had previous Baldur's Gate games, but nothing's really hit quite like
Not in a long time.
not quite like that. And most kids are video games are their a lot of time are the toys of today. I assume there are still an audience for toys, and still people want to buy toys. Um, but Hasbro have us are at least I always think of them as the Transformers people. Um,
Yeah. Well,
uh,
those movies have done their cost for sure.
I'm sure they made a lot of money off those, a
Yeah,
lot
they
of
will have
money.
done.
But that is the unfortunate news I had to share on this cold, wintry time of year. So we will move on to lighter things,
Yes.
and we will just, as usual, we're going to do our spell of the week. I have a spell, and we're going to do monster of the week. Rob has a monster. Not to say in that order. We do roll for it in the usual roll off. Um, I'm going to go for something kind of my most festive dice, which are my metal dice, which are red with the sort of silver.
I think yours are probably a bit more festive than mine. I've gone for a kind of shimmery red and dark red one. Almost got a red and gold, that kind of
Hmm.
Christmas theme. From one of the, I'm sure most D&D players have probably got a set like this. They very cheap on Amazon.
Hmm.
Get multiple sets for quite
Tenner.
cheap in a nice bag. But I've had it a long time.
Hmm.
Let's go.
Oh, that was a thud, and I've seen that number before.
Is that
Fortunately,
good or bad?
that's bad. I
Oh, oh, well, I've got a really middling result, so I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I got 12.
got a two.
Oh, bro. Oh well.
I got a 15 last week, a two the week before. So I'm seeing a two again. These dice, because they're so heavy, they don't roll that
Is it
well.
metal dice?
Yeah, yeah. They don't because they're so heavy. You've got to really put force into it to get them to roll, and that kind of barely rolled. Um, but it is what it is.
Controversial dice, metal dice. I'm not a fan personally.
I like the look of
But,
them.
I think they do usually look pretty cool, but it's the thud on the table when they roll. You need a
Yes.
good rolling tray for metal dice. But anyway, since I have won,
Mhm.
I think last week did I make you go first?
Yes, monster of the week last week went first.
Well, this week I will go first.
Okay. To maintain monster of the
Mine,
week.
exactly. Yeah, why not? Why not? I've picked my monster this week based on Dan's choice last week because we talked about the acidic slime last week and how iconic it is. We, funnily
Illustrious
enough, we mentioned.
cube. Our
Oh,
cube
what did I?
boys.
Yeah, acidic slime.
Acidic time.
Giant's cube. Sorry, what am I
But
talking
I'm gonna
about?
write down acidic
Giant's
slime
cube.
to come up with my own ooze.
Why did I call it that?
I don't know. It's not a one.
It is what it is, though. Basically,
Eh,
it's yeah,
It's an
it's
acidic
acidic
slime.
and it's a slimy cube.
Yeah.
So have what you will. I was just being very literal with words, I guess. But anyway, we were talking about how it was so iconic. It made an appearance in the recent D&D movie, which we've just mentioned. So I've picked Mimic for the same reason. Um, Everybody should know what mimics are that is in any way experienced, not even in D&D, just in fantasy in general. They have been in many different video games. I knew of them before I came into contact with D&D purely because of video games like old school Final Fantasies. Um, They're in various other video games. I've seen them in board games before now. I've got a few little Mimic minis. Very famously in the Dark Souls genre of games.
Yeah.
We all
And
know about looking for chests that breathe, that sort of thing.
if you've seen the art of D&D, the likelihood you might have seen, you've probably seen either a beholder or a mimic,
Yeah,
or maybe
or a dragon.
or a dragon. Well, yes, the dragon's in the freaking logo. So
It's probably, I would probably say it's one of the most five iconic monsters in the
yes,
game. It is
yes.
a treasure chest, typically a treasure chest
Mm,
that sentient, has a pair of eyes, a big gaping mouth with a large tongue, very sharp teeth. Sometimes they have long, creepy legs and arms, like they do in Dark Souls. Sometimes they don't. Um, one of the things that I love about mimics is they fit extremely well in any adventure, in any dungeon. Um, they don't have a set environment that they like to dwell in, really. They're a shape changer, and really they're just, well, it says it in the description below, they're
mm,
imitative predators, which
mm.
means they're predators that imitate aspects of their environment. They're kind of a chameleon hunter. So people have we joked last week about what's the scariest thing you can think of as a mimic, and we talked about
Socks.
um, socks, shoes, other various things that you might put bodily appendages in.
Yes, yes, and
Um,
I said ice cubes.
Ice cube, that would be, yeah, that would be. Oh, yeah, I was thinking of that for the acidic ooze or the gelatinous ooze
Oh,
as
it
well.
was the gelatinous ooze, wasn't it? I said
Yeah,
for that for. So yes, you're right. I just edited
but
that and I forgot.
well, it could be the tankard that the drink is in could be the mimic,
Yeah, okay,
and the ice
yes.
cubes could be ice cubes.
A
Um,
mimic teaming up with a gelatinous cube.
quite the horrendous trap. So yeah, mimics they're great. They don't have too much of a difficult challenge rating at their base level. They're
No.
only a 2. They have 60-ish HP, 12 armor class, um, and they do one bite or one pseudopod attack, which does the same damage at 1d8 plus 3 bludgeoning or 1d8 plus 3 piercing. If they are shape changed into an object, they can stick things to themselves, like grapple it, and they have an advantage to uh, things that they have grappled. But it's a really good thing to just pop in an adventure. Um, if you are having your players in any kind of dungeon, they might even be breaking into a house, like a noble's house, to look for a magic item, or into a dungeon to just do the usual thing,
Yeah, yeah.
kill some creatures, get some loot, save the princess, whatever it may be. There's no better way than making your players suspicious than knowing that a mimic might be there. That mimic could be a door. That mimic could be a standard treasure chest. Um, all the treasure inside the treasure chest could be mimics.
Hmm.
There is even a horde mimic,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah. I've heard.
is a more advanced version of the mimic. Challenge rating 8, has a few other little abilities, but it is basically what's the Duck McScrooge or whatever his name is. I always just think
It's
of
Scrooge
his
McDuck.
Scrooge McDuck. I always think of his swimming pool of coins when I think of a hoard.
Yeah,
It's that kind of thing. A big hoard of treasure of coins, but it's a mimic, and it's designed to hunt the adventurers that might be trying to acquire said piles of coins and so forth and so on. There's not really a huge amount to talk about with mimics. You could have, I think really the best conversation to have around mimics is what could you have them be.
yeah. Yeah.
Since it's the Christmas episode, they could be presents under a tree if you were running a Christmas one shot with Christmas themes.
The tree itself.
Um, they could be the tree itself.
Yeah.
I I ran recently in my other group when we were welcoming some new players before we started Curse of Strahd, and I wanted to kind of just run a one shot to see how they fit within the group, which ultimately was successful, and that was that was a really great thing. But I ran a bit of a Halloween one shot where they were going down to some haunted mines,
Hmm.
uh, and they fought a. I mentioned that I had an idea where the minecarts were mimics.
Yes, yes.
Instead of that, they were riding their minecarts along the kind of roller coaster mine rails, basically. And as part of that encounter, a massive train came up at the side of them on a different set of rails, which was just a giant minecart mimic monster,
Yeah.
and it had these like cranes that turned into arms and teeth at the front, and yeah, it was great fun. Homebrewed the whole thing, but
Sweet.
um, you could have a mimic be anything.
Yes, you can. Yes.
Give it an environment for it to hunt in, and that
Mimic
environment can be anything.
mimics are, other than being iconic, obviously, they're just really kind of fun things. There's a temptation, and I think it's one of those things. You know, when you're thinking about what you want to do in your sessions, or you're thinking about just D&D in general,
Yeah,
you think, oh, I should do that. And then when it comes to playing the actual session, you then forget all about that idea.
yeah,
Um, I have a lot of those with mimics, and the idea of like, I just want to have like the mimic um stat block available to me at all times. Just open it so that whenever I just feel like doing something funny or silly or just throwing a mimic in there, I should just throw a mimic in there.
yeah,
Just to either wake players up, like what we talked about engagement last week, to wake them up and get them back
yeah.
to re-engaged, or just to have something really silly go on that will just get a good laugh. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm happy for anybody watching, of course, to steal that idea of just keep the mimic close to hand. Well, obviously not a literal mimic, because you're going to lose your hand if you keep. But no, and the stat block, you keep it close to hand. Um, there's also, as Rob mentioned, there as well as being the horde mimic, which was brought in Fizz bands, which is a larger, huger one. I'm sure we can cover in some detail separately at another point. There is also a juvenile one you can get that came from
There's,
Tasha's.
there's a giant one.
There's a giant one, and there's a few variants of it you can get from various different books. Um, so the information is available for anybody who's just looking to do, who's doesn't want to have to do the work of homebrewing it themselves. It's kind of already been done for you. It's
Yeah.
available. Um,
Once you see the basic stat sheet, anyway, it's fairly easy to go right. Let's up that challenge rating.
mhm,
Let's give it an extra 50 HP. Let's make it do 2d6 plus 5 damage, or maybe give it poisonous fangs, or whatever
mhm.
you want to do. Um, what's
Yeah.
the? I don't think have you used that many mimics before?
I have written mimics into games. I've never. I don't. I'm trying to think if I've ever thrown one at you specifically.
I don't think you have.
I feel like I recall doing it, but again, I know that I created before the Horde Mimic was a thing. I created my essentially the same thing and
Yeah.
put it in the one shot that we did, which was like the bank heist.
Oh, but we didn't go to that vault,
We
did we?
didn't go to that vault. I did that, and I did where I wanted like smaller mimics, which were all going to be books in a thing, which is in the same thing as well. Um, I don't think I've ever thrown them at you. I've definitely used them in a one shot that you weren't in. Luke, my brother, was in it. Because and again, it was, I think I mentioned it before. Well, I think it might have been again last week. Was a goblin one shot. Everybody played goblins.
Oh yeah,
Like the final boss was a mind flare. Because I used all the iconic monsters in it.
yeah.
Because I,
That's
I
always
I
good.
I asked what people wanted to play, and I was told, well, we've never had some of the most iconic monsters. So, oh, okay. So I did Gelatinous Cube, and then they went into a room and there was chests and they were mimics, and then the end boss was a mind flare. Um, So I've used it in
Pretty
that
classic stuff.
capacity. It works. It worked. They were just chests. They touched them. They were mimics. Um, they're adhesive, which is great. So you can
Yeah,
get stuck to them.
pseudopodded. Yeah, I've used mimics a few times in various ways. I did a Halloween one shot a good few years ago now, which was in a haunted mansion, and they it there was a bit of a it wasn't Resident Evil vibe for the bad guys, but for the mansion itself, had slight Resident Evil vibes. They were looking for two keys to get through the door so that they could get up onto the roof to fight the headless horseman boss, basically.
Yeah,
But
it's the almost like the Doom trope, isn't it? Where you got to get the keys to get to the next
yeah,
area. Yeah.
Resident Evil have always had that kind of puzzle throughout their various games, and I think it works for D&D. And one of the rooms that they went in where the key was, there was a very like ornate dresser with a mirror, and in the mirror they could see there was a ghost sat at the dresser, but they couldn't see it at the dresser. It was just in the reflection. And once they started to try and engage with that ghost, it pointed to the corner where there was a large piano. And I put it there purely because one of my players was playing a bard that was. He wasn't just a pianist, but he was kind of a music savant. They could play loads of
Hmm.
instruments, basically, because of one of their parents was a famous composer or something, if I
Hmm.
remember rightly. Um, so I knew I could get them to play the piano, which they did, and they started playing a gothic theme. And then the finger guard, the key guard, sprouted teeth and just slammed down on their fingers while they were playing it. And the piano's legs started like unfolding into big spider limbs, and they had to fight a giant spider mimic in a small room. And yeah,
So
that was great stuff.
what was
Yeah,
the
mimics are fun.
what was the deal with the mirror then? It's just a ghost in a mirror that was wanting to feed the mimic.
It was just to make them look at the look at
Ah.
the. It was literally just to look at the piano. And once they'd beaten the mimic, they had to reach through the mirror to get a key that was on the reflection of the
Hmm.
desk. Um, it didn't link up that well. I just wanted to scare the shit out of them with a mimic that was a piano. It
Sounds like
wasn't the most genius setup, but it worked,
it
and
sounds like it
they
worked.
enjoyed it.
Sounds like it worked.
Um,
Oh.
what other mimics have I done? I played in a full. I played as a player in a again. It wasn't a Halloween based one shot. It was just a random one shot, and there was like a mansion that was protected by a magic bubble, where there was a mad scientist in the basement doing experiments. But the entire house was that we had to work our way through first.
Hmm.
Was full of mimics, just absolutely full of mimics. All the furniture was mimics. It took us ages to get through it.
It's a
But I
bit
was a barbarian, so I was happy to be doing that.
just cutting your way through it. Just trying everything. Don't give it a chance, just axe it.
Yeah, that after the first room, the second room I went in and poked a few things with my axe, and as soon as the first thing sprouted teeth, that was it. Like I just
Uh,
whirlwind through the room.
I would just been stabbing everything. Just doesn't matter. Just stab, 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 stab.
I think the wizard set the next room on fire. Yeah, it was.
Wizard
I mean, it was
things.
there to do. Yeah, it was there to. It and that kind of is the effect on your players when you show them mimics, because
Mm.
you're saying to them anything could be this creature,
Hmm.
and I've caught you with it once now. And that then brings me on to my next amazing point: is if you want to really mess with your players and they are in a dungeon and you want a standard chest, just a chest, just a big wooden chest, decorative, gems encrusted, gold rims, whatever, nice padlock. Give that chest, don't lock it, put something nice in it, but give it an illusion protecting it that makes it look like it's breathing.
I was gonna say you make a chest that looks like a mimic, so you can look
Yeah,
like it's got teeth and eyes, it, and then they will avoid it.
yeah, just looks like a sleeping mimic. They're like, well, I'm not opening that.
Yeah, because well, the funny thing about the mimic, right, is everyone does kind of have this weird fear of a mimic.
Yeah,
They aren't that tough. It
no, they're
can be
not.
killed quite easily. But it's the surprise, people, nobody likes to feel like you've got tricked. But
Yeah,
I mean, I'm like as a DM, I love tricking players or
you
throwing
do.
players off and the twists galore. Um, so mimics are right. I love mimics. I love doppelgangers and all manner of shapeshifters I really like. Um, but we will move on from Monster of the Week, that being the mimic, and we will move on and we will do my spell of the week.
Yeah,
This spell is a cornerstone of your generally your healing classes. So your clerics, are your generally ones your clerics and I think clerics and druids in my head. Though it's apparently not a normal druid one. But I think that it was made an actual druid in Tasha's, right? I'm
Yes.
sure it
Yeah, it was
became
Tasha.
a full druid thing, despite what D&D Beyond says. But it is a kind of cornerstone of your healers, and that is Revivify, which of course can be a mouthful, as it doesn't seem like the most obvious word for a spell. But Revivify,
Revive
it,
it.
hmm?
Revive Iffy.
Revivify, yeah. Revivify is the lowest level resurrection spell. If someone
It is.
if someone fails all their death saves or is instant killed and they're dead, they can be revivified. They can be brought back, resurrected, revitalized, if you will, by this spell as long as it is done within a minute of the death. So it's a quick, get to it quickly, sort of don't mess around sort of spell. I always think it's quite odd that it is a necromancy spell, by the way. I always like, I just even though yes, I get it, you're raising something from the dead. But then when you look at like when you go up to the higher level ones that give you more time and have less restrictions on them, um, one's called Raise Dead. You do it all the
Yes.
time. I've done it. People do it where they get it confused with Animate Dead because
Yes.
they're both necromancy spells. But they
I
technically,
do it because of a Magic the Gathering card, because there was a Magic the Gathering card called Raise Dead.
yeah. Revivify, I think though, however, is pretty obvious what it is, what it does from the sound of things. But the short and sweet of it is, yes, it really brings you back as long as you or the person who died had only been dead less than a minute. It brings it back with a single hit point, and basically the creature can't be brought back if it has died of old age or if it's missing any body parts. Good thing for your DM to remember if you want to perma kill somebody, take their head or a limb
Yeah.
or something. Remove something. Um, That's usually the way to go about it. And probably one of the most important parts of this spell, which becomes, uh, I think, one of the biggest factors in most people's shopping sessions, is the diamonds worth 300 gold pieces, which the spell does consume, which is a lot of coinage, but it is kind of like worth it, in my opinion,
Yeah, it is.
because you're bringing someone back from the dead. I actually don't. My personal opinion on Revivify is actually that it's not really enough. It kind of makes it seem cheap when you start getting into the economy of D&D worlds, when you can afford like how much like you can afford things that are less powerful than a revivify spell. Well, I don't know, I'm saying it wrong. You can spend like 1,000 gold on like a +1 sword. That's more than it costs to bring someone's life back. The
Yeah.
balance of the economy is really off there. Um,
Well,
so I can tell if you've got an opinion, Rob, give it before I move
I think
before I can play more.
the DM controls the economy.
Yes.
The DM decides how much 300 gold really is worth
Mhm.
in the game. Like, it's a level 5 spell, so players aren't getting it until they're entering tier 2 play realistically.
Mhm.
Or, on
Revivify
the
is
cusp
a
of that.
third level spell.
Sorry, when I say level 5, I mean you're getting it at level 5
Okay.
if you're a main caster.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about tiers of play rather than
Yes.
the
Yes.
level
Yes.
each of the spell. Sorry to confuse the subject there. It's a third level spell. All main casters get third level spells at level 5. Um, so they're not going to be like starting the game having it, if you're starting most book campaigns start on the low end. Um, they're not gonna. And it also really depends on the campaign itself. Like, look at Curse of Strahd. Like, there wasn't much use for money in that campaign because there's not that many shops.
No.
If you're running a campaign where your players are going out into the field and they're just adventuring, then realistically gold is meaningless. So they
Mm.
want to be mostly finding magic items. So you're going to be choosing what they find for the most part.
Mm.
Um, So the value of things is kind of inconsequential in that respect. If they're gonna find diamonds, they're gonna find them. If they're not, they're not. And it's up to kind of the DM to really control that. In a world like Stormia, where we're in a gigantic city, and there is all kinds of shops, and where it's difficult because we're playing at a fairly high level. We're playing at level 10,
Mm,
and I think that's sometimes problematic for our campaign because it
mhm,
means that you have to make the job the way the things that we do, the fights that we end up having make sense for our level.
mhm,
But you don't want to trivialize our level because we are level 10. So
mhm.
it's there's a lot of things going on there that's not the easiest to balance in the world. But at the same time, uh, I don't know. I think I'm quite a generous DM because if players
You are.
want to have Revivify, I'm like you you can have it. Like if I will freely give one diamond,
Yes.
um, quite easy. But that don't mean that if they use that diamond, I'm going to always give them another one really easily as well. And I typically, unless the players really look for it, I'm never going to give more than one diamond at a time. So I think that controls things fairly well there because not more than one player can't die at a time, if that makes sense, or the death will be permanent.
Mhm. Yeah, you did it. You did that in Curse of Strahd, where you managed to. You basically never really had more than one diamond at a time, really. I remember that we had to. We had the time when we had the was it Raise Dead or Revivify scroll that we used
Yes.
to bring back Duncan, I think, so our bard.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was done because you get that scroll from a certain NPC, which I won't name.
mhm. And we had that. Of course, we didn't have by the rules a cleric or a paladin, an artificer, or a druid to um or a warlock if it's the right type of
Yeah,
warlock
we did.
to actually do it. So you were very generous, and I would have ruled the same, to be honest. Allowed pretty much any of the spellcasters to do it because it was from a spell scroll.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's a different discussion in itself. But
it
I'm
is,
always on the side of let any spellcaster use a scroll. Anybody else, just do an arcane check to see if you
yeah,
can understand the scroll and then do it.
yeah, that's fair. Um, but yeah, the problem I think with me is that I say I associate Revivify, Raise Dead, Resurrection, and True Resurrection, um, with um not with the cost of the diamond. Yeah, it's 300 gold pieces. If you're, you know, if you start as a level one character, the likelihood is you're going to have the money to buy it by the time you get this spell because you'll progressed. If you're starting at higher levels, so less likely to have the access to that coinage, but depending on the generosity of your dungeon master. Um, but it's more the cost from a narrative standpoint or the value of life
Yeah,
to me. Because if you were to say how much is your life worth, you're probably going to say more than £300 or $300 or pesos or whatever.
well, yeah,
You're going to
going to be
say,
worth more than that in America, that's for sure.
yeah, you're going to say that it's worth more than 300. So it feels a bit like, okay, well, okay, I'm going to accept 300. I'm going to go with the rules as written. 300 gold pieces for a diamond. I do have thing currently in Stormir within our world where the diamond has a certain value, but what it's sold at might not necessarily match the value of the diamond because you know
People are profiteering.
capitalism. Um,
I mean,
but
we are also in a city with its mines are pretty much dry and it's
yes,
floating over an ocean. So, like,
yes,
where the fuck do diamonds come from?
we
Especially
don't.
since the spell consumes them. So,
Hmm.
I get it. I'm not complaining about that.
No, no, no.
I
That
just
I know.
yeah,
So, but
I just
my
wanted to make the point there that the DM kind of whatever the
mhm,
situation really controls the likelihood of the players
yeah,
getting one.
I think my thinking all comes from the fact that if everyone starts dying and it's so easy because you've got so much money, as it's common in Dungeons and Dragons by certain levels, you're just bringing like people are dying in fights and you're bringing them back every fight and all this. L- Death is no longer a challenge. It's no longer a threat. You don't
Yeah,
care if you fail your death. Death save should be one of the most anxious parts of a fight or any encounter. But it can that's taken away. This was and we bring up every single week, but it's not a surprise because it is Critical Role, and they are the biggest um, live show, live actual play show in the world. But they had that thing where like I think by the end of campaign one, everybody had been revivified at some point. And some of them twice. And it's good to see that in that case, Matt Mercer had knew that was going to be a thing because he also knew
Yeah,
his players had ridiculous amounts of money. Nothing
yeah,
was really outside of it. Despite how Laura Bailey plays, kind of very conservative with her coin, um, they do often have quite a lot of money, especially in campaign one, less so in two. But they still have coin. Um, he puts a he introduces another mechanic which I really quite like. Not quite the same as how I'm going to play it. Nobody's died in Stormy yet, so no one knows. I'll keep that as a surprise
yeah,
yet. Um,
yeah.
but the way he does it is that essentially your first time is kind of free. You die, you're revivified. Costs you that diamond or diamonds. Doesn't have to be a single diamond. Diamonds. That's fine. The I think then it becomes a second. I think it's a second, like on. There has an additional challenge involved where you
Yeah.
basically have to like call the soul back to the body. You have to try different things, like offer things, or if you're a charisma character, you can try and like persuade the soul to come back, like talking to the person's corpse and trying to get the soul to come back. Um, Various different things. There's been some great moments in Critical Role because of that, and I think what it did always did was create this idea of like Uh, it created more consequence to death because there was always that risk. The problem is, they always succeeded.
It's different with Critical Role though, isn't it? Because
But
they've
they
got
also,
viewers as well,
yeah,
and
they all
they
got viewers, but they also didn't die too often, to be honest with you. It wasn't like every fight they were dying. Um, so it's forgivable. But then again, I always think to the Mollymock's death was probably one of the most impactful moments of any of their entire run of campaigns. And he died. They had no cleric, no. I don't think even at that time.
well, they had a cleric, but I don't think they had diamonds.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't in the fight. She'd been
Oh
kidnapped.
yeah, she was in the box, wasn't she?
So, but I don't think she was even high enough level at that point to be able to
Maybe
do it. I
not.
don't know. Maybe, maybe around that level.
I
But
can't remember. It's a long
he,
time ago.
it's a long time since I watched it. But that's one of the moments that really got me stuck into Critical Role because it had a really big impact, and it was a death. And I think without the threat of death for your characters, unless that's kind of the vibe you're going for, and you want it to be kind of just really loose, and you're not too bothered about having um that as a potential occurrence, if that just, you kind of have this big epic thing where life and death is nothing to worry about because people are brought back all the time and it's just a part of the world, that's fine. I like death to mean something, to
Yeah,
be
I do. I
impactful.
do. I do want death to mean something, and I think this is definitely a bigger discussion than just simply the spell revivify.
I
But
think it is.
at the same time,
Mm,
um, if we're looking at some of our favorite motivations, some of our favorite like movies, video games, character motivations, that sort of thing,
mm,
death is always quite heavily interlinked with those. Let's look at arguably the most popular and famous Final Fantasy is 7, and I would always argue because one of the main characters dies in it. It's a hugely impactful scene.
mm,
You can't play that music to me now without me having a wave of emotion and nostalgia. Um, it's just you always will remember that.
hmm
And look at
But my favorite
what
game
I've
series
done.
of all time, Mass Effect, does the same thing.
Yeah, with that.
Morden's death,
Yeah, especially
unavoidable.
if you've done the extra dialogues so that he actually is it a rhyme that he sings to himself or something while he works
Yeah,
or
it's from
I mean you can make it way more emotional if you've done the right conversations with him,
what's it
can't
called in Costello? It's a famous like musical thing, isn't it? It's like a
you? Yeah,
and in in the second game, you can get the dialogue options, and he tells you how he how he um how he would sing that, and he learned that. It's like a Solarian scientist version of it. Yeah, it's
yeah.
impactful, man. Means a lot.
It does, yeah. And like going back to what you were saying about going back to what you were saying about coaxing the soul back to the body.
Hmm.
Uh, it's an interesting thing that you've said because every character I make, I
Mm,
already know if they would accept being revived. Can't say the words. If they would accept revivification or
mm,
not. Arrakis, who you know, he without even remembering the plot of Gladiator, I kind of made him a bit of a
mm,
Gladiator themed character, didn't I? You know, his wife, son, and daughter had been brutally murdered
mm,
by cultists for the god of lies and deceit and
mm,
torture, and basically the god of evil
mm,
in your world. Um, I didn't play him too strongly linked to that because
no,
that was many years ago in his past because I didn't want to go in there with a tragic character right
no.
off the bat. Of course, then you just coincidentally made the
Yeah.
big bad of the campaign that god, the champion of that god, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're going to be looking at Narakis under a bit more of a lens than I expected. But for that reason, if he'd have died at any point, it really would have depended on what you said happened to him when he crossed over to the spirit world, whether he would have accepted the call to come back
Mhm.
to his newfound family.
Yes.
Um, if you'd have basically presented him with the fields of Elysium, where he walked through the yellow fields of agriculture and found his homestead that has as he had built it on the plains of what what was the continent called that he was from?
Atia.
Atia. Um, and this sort of found his wife and his daughter and his son
Mhm.
just there waiting for him. Would he go back or would he fuck?
No.
He
Well,
had found his peace.
yeah. The thing, because you're talking about this, the funny thing with the Revivify, it doesn't stipulate that. There's
It
no.
doesn't, and I hate that about it.
It's only until you get to Raised Dead and the later ones that it actually becomes like they're literally. If you look at Raised Dead, if the creature's soul is both willing and at liberty to rejoin the body, the creature returns to life with one hit point. That is not written with Revivify. Revivify just it's basically a defibrillator, right? It just
It
boof.
is, yeah, it is. Yeah, you got a minute to do it. For that very reason as well, it's great to go like this to your players, and I have done it in the past. And you literally just go, "Okay, time's ticking. What are you doing?" DMs do that to your players.
Yeah, yeah,
The amount of anxiety, sorry, Steph, but the amount of anxiety you will cause is chef's kiss.
good. It's good.
Um, I hope none of
Um,
Strahd players see that because that might happen again.
no, you've given me a really good idea though. There's not quite the same, but a really good idea. I might tell you after just for amusement. Um, but the yeah, that's Revivify. We haven't talked directly about it because there isn't actually really too much to talk about.
There is.
For me, I want to talk about it because of the greater discussion at play with regards to death. It's a pretty simple spell for what it is. And as I said, your clerics, your paladins, your artificers, life domain, grave domain, circle of wildfire, and celestial warlocks. They are the ones that are on the D&D Beyond, but I'm pretty certain any druid can also get it. It's not
Any
specific.
druid, yeah.
Um, which probably also means that there's others, but it doesn't really matter. Um, if you don't have it, a person in your party with it, yeah, might well, I'll say it's going to suck for you, but it might even make it better because it increases the tension. But we will move on from talking about Revivify,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk to bring us into a lighter subject from death on this jolly time of year, this festive time of year. We're going to talk about Christmas, and we're going to
It's
talk
a time
about
of rebirth, I suppose.
was that?
A time of birth and rebirth, I suppose you could tie it into
Yeah,
that.
sure. It's
Sorry, carry on.
Saturnalia, right? And all this sort of stuff. We're going to be doing just a bit of general discussion with regards to how we would make a Christmas venture. It's the best way to put it. Or say a campaign, because campaign's a long form series of adventures where the adventure kind of covers everything, I think,
Yeah.
including your one shots and stuff or short campaigns. Um, so I was thinking, you generally speaking, being that it is Christmas, I would always lean on a very much more of a comedic tone I would target a comedic tone, at least with for the most part. I'm probably gonna use Santa. I'm probably gonna use elves and reindeers and all these different things because they're already magical and they're already very Christmassy. Um, so I, and then I would just go, well, Santa is basically just like some sort of archfey or,
Yeah.
uh, and there's elves. Well, we've already got gnomes, don't we? We already have gnomes. Got those, and there's no reason that reindeers can't be magical and
No
talk,
reason.
and can't be mimics. They can't be. It's an inanimate object for a mimic. Um,
Like, summoned fae. Santa's a druid.
got a good, how do you think a
There you
really
go.
funny story would be you're somehow all teleported to the North Pole where Mrs. Claus wants you to try and find Santa. He hasn't left his workshop, but he's gone missing, and you're gonna find him, and he's just been eaten by a mimic. He just
Yeah. I mean, it, so on the subject of Christmas adventures, there are
mm,
so many Christmas movies
mm,
for you to. Even when I say movies, I don't just mean movies and such. I mean, like, look at the classics. Look at Scrooge. You know,
mm.
those sorts of Dickensian style. Is Scrooge Dickens?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Christmas Carol.
yeah, yeah. Very, very kind of Dickensian style classic stories. Have very good kind of moral compass teaching
Hmm.
points. Um, or if you wanted to go something a bit more comedic, one of my favorite Christmas films is Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I watched it this year while I was putting the tree up.
Did you?
I just always love that, and it brings back such great memories of just randomly this one time I was on the mic to I think it was Gareth in my other D&D group just playing video games, and Kaylee was eating a cookie, and it was Christmas, and we just watched the film, and I was just like, Kaylee, put that cookie down, come on, it's Christmas, we got to go. And I just yeah, any excuse to use an Arnie voice, I'm always down with. Um, I've definitely run at least
Oh,
one
I
shot.
just saw like combining Arnie movies to make but bring the story of Jingle All the Way, and it's just Conan the Barbarian. Uh,
uh,
already,
Crimson Christopher or something like that, or
yeah.
Crimson Nick. Just absolutely
But
slaying
no,
it.
I think generally speaking, if you're going to make something that's Christmassy, you're probably going to be doing a one shot, two shot, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
If we're going to look at it from like trying to be kind of practical with it, pragmatic with it, it's going to be maybe two fights, maybe three at a push. If you're going for like a really easy, quick starter one, then and then you know build it up to a larger, big fight. Rob has run a Christmas one for us before.
yeah,
That involved Krampus.
he did. Yeah, I do love a bit of Krampus.
So the Krampus is always a go-to if you want to. There's plenty of monsters you can use out there, especially in the demon or devil category, if you want to create your own Krampus.
You guys
Using
actually rescued Krampus as well,
we
so that
did
was a nice little twist. You
we did
rescued
rescue
him from
the Raven Queen.
kind of the Raven Queen or the
Mm,
champion of the Raven Queen.
mhm. Um, and that was a lot of fun because we rode a sled and everything, like down a hill that I pushed down a hill, and I remember that. That was fun.
Yeah, that was great.
There's so much Christmas. Like if you want to go proper heavy-handed on the Christmas theming, Session Zero is already good, but you're not going to generally do one for a one shot. You're not going to do one for a one shot. But you should still try and have an understanding of your players going into it. And if you think your players are going to prefer more of a horror theme, Christmas thing, there's plenty of opportunity to have, as we said, mimics that are Christmas trees, or spooky things. Spooky, go with a Christmas Carol. You got the ghosts of Christmas past
Yeah,
and present and future, and all those spooky ghosts. Um, or lean on the whole Nightmare Before Christmas thing, and you can definitely make there's a whole assortment of characters you can choose from if you want to use popular culture as
Gremlins.
a Gremlins. Yeah, if you want to have
It's a Christmas
Gremlins.
movie.
Um,
Goblins instead of gremlins, or what? I don't know.
yeah,
Whatever. All
there might
kinds
be a
of
Gremlins. I definitely created a Gremlin once
imps.
simply to have one, but yeah, you probably would use goblins, I think,
Goblins are imps.
as your basis. Yeah.
But I mean, you don't need a session zero, but it's very easy to just if you have a consistent group already to just
Mm,
say, right, guys, it's that time of year. It's a good excuse, actually, in practice.
Mhm,
Less so with our group because our group is really consistent.
mhm,
Um,
generally.
I know, I know that next week we're going to probably be missing Joe, but
Mm,
we typically will have enough players to play on if one's missing. So, like
yes.
you know, there's people go to work Christmas dues and stuff like that, but it doesn't typically stop us playing. Um, whereas my other group has sometimes struggled a little bit, but I think this year we're actually going to be a bit more consistent because we've
Good.
taken on. I specifically tried to get a bit more of a larger group
Mm,
so that because the Strad could be a little bit
mm,
more, or sorry, a bit less interrupted. But regardless of what your group runs like, take the opportunity if only some of your players are going to be available at any time and you don't want to at least miss D&D over Christmas to say, right, guys, those of you that are available on whatever date, let's do a one shot. We'll do it Christmas themed, and just take the opportunity to just say, do you guys want? Do you want to use existing characters and have them just kind of spirited off into the Christmas adventure and then promptly placed back, and either it all be a dream or it all be a magic snow globe that's just zipped them away to an adventure, or a god that's just come in and plonked them somewhere
mhm,
else, or do you want to make some comical characters or some
mhm,
cool characters? And it's really easy to just say, what level do you want to play at? Do you want to play at the kind of level we're already playing at? Do you want it comedy themed? Do you want a bit of a spooky one, a bit of a
mm,
kind of fireside horror story,
mhm,
Christmas spooky tale, which is a bit Dickensian, bit Victorian?
mhm. How about as for a question then? If you were to play in a Christmas one shot and you were told to make a very Christmassy character, like similar to the improv questions we've come up with before, I suppose, what sort of character would you create? We're talking,
Oh,
goofy, kind of silly Christmas story. Probably, maybe involving Santa Claus, Father Christmas, whatever you want to call him, old jolly Saint Nick.
there's a few I could play. There is absolutely a few I could play. I could play um, a gnome artificer who is of quite an obvious, and you can tell going already, they're a toy maker. They work in Santa's workshop or whoever's workshop,
Hmm.
whoever represents Saint Nicholas in your D&D world. If
Hmm.
you're not using typical real world
Yeah.
mythology, um, that's a nice easy one. Obviously, all I would probably go with if I was doing that, probably the artillerist.
Hmm.
And just have my gun shooting out um, presents, and when I would use the flamethrower variant, it'd just be like a hot glue gun from when I was assembling toys and stuff like that. Like having that kind of themed. I wouldn't really may put too much more considerations into it than that, and I'd play it quite reactive to the other players in the adventure. Another one that I've just thought of now is definitely just a carol singer, just a bard that's a carol singer. And you could just really just constantly be singing carols to your players. And if you're the kind of person that likes to be a bit of a not a spotlight hog in a bad way, but
Hmm.
you know, kind of is really happy to involve yourself with the role play and be a bit animated, then that could be a really really good option. Um, Being a bit more of a general vibe. That would depend on the on not campaign, sorry, on the one shot. So like
Hmm.
if we were going with a bit more of a kind of Victorian Christmas horror story, I would maybe go with the is it the Spirit Medium Bard or whatever it was called, the one out
Yeah.
of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. That is a bit more of a tarot reader or something.
Yeah. College of
Um,
Spirits.
College of Spirits. Maybe if it was a bit of a storyteller, maybe the College of Whispers, or I don't know. There's
Hmm.
all kinds I could really go with for that. Um, or if I really just wanted to be probably one of both of our favourite character archetypes is big dude go smashy smash. I would literally just get a barbarian with the new um, s- Path of the Giants
Hmm.
one from is it Big B Presents?
Yeah. I think so.
The one that gets massive when they rage.
Yeah.
And can throw things, and just have them as Krampus.
I was thinking about how could I make the Grinch
Yeah.
I think
Definitely a rogue,
he's
stealing
he feel yeah
presents.
stealing presents, but then I was kind of like he sings and rhymes a lot because it's um
It's
and
true, yeah.
I was thinking, oh, you could be a bard of some kind. That also kind of works.
Yeah,
Um,
because bards get expert anyway, so you could take the expert in much more rogue-like qualities.
yeah,
I know I would normally say I would look for multi-classing in that, but if you're going with the bard, you definitely don't need to.
no. And I was just thinking the Grinch or um, yeah, if I was playing like a Santa's kind of elf thing, so being like a gnome, I was thinking, I could be like you could be like a cleric.
Mm.
Um, and Santa would be your god, or you go warlock and be like a celestial warlock, and again Santa is your is your is your thing.
Need a paladin so that you can do find steed and get Rudolph to ride around on.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, just be Santa Claus. Santa Claus is the paladin, right?
Yeah, of course he is. Oath of what oath would Santa be?
Oh, now yeah. Let me bring. I'm gonna look up the paladin oaths and
The
see
oath
which
of
one.
the ancients.
Uh, ancients. Yeah, maybe devotion. He's pretty devoted.
Yeah, that's just a good sort of catch-all one. Though is the oath of devotion, so I always look for others.
Uh, crown,
Won't be conquest, I don't think.
redemption.
I mean, he could be redemption.
Because redemptions are the ones that are like the peaceful ones, right? Only to.
Yeah, he wouldn't necessarily need to be redeeming himself, but he would still
Hmm,
be quite what's the word when you're non-violent?
pacifist.
Pacifistic. Thank you.
But yes, I think you can have a lot of fun being kind of goofy with all the different classes. And if you haven't learned anything yet from watching us when we talk about these things, flavor is such a big part of D&D. Everyone gets bogged down and
Actually,
caught up in the rules, and there's so much you can do. It's like if someone comes to you and goes, "I want to play X, I want to play this character from this thing. How do I make that happen?" A lot of time that's just flavor. Like it's
yes,
flavor.
very much.
There'd be a couple of classes that might work better, but like it's flavor. A lot of them, like even if you, I don't know why it's come to my head, but there are characters, for example, the Last Airbender, Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? And you automatically go monk because it's all about that sort of monkey things, monk things. Uh,
Yes.
there is a flying monkey thing in it, but I can't remember what he's called. But they're all monks basically, but there's no reason you couldn't just switch that over and be any other class you wanted to if you want to try and create it to make it work. I was
Yeah.
trying to choose something that was very specific. Seems like it would be this, but you don't. If you don't want to play a monk, you can still play that sort of character in a different class. It's always available to you. Um, you can be a monk but not be a monk as well as a thing. If you want to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
a monk by flavor but not a monk by like class, you can also do that. Um,
I've been a monk that I've played a monk that wasn't really, didn't have a monastery, didn't have a dojo, didn't really like.
mm,
I played a Dampier that was the
oh yes.
Mercy Way of the Mercy monk, and the necrotic damage that he did extra was just kind of similar to like
Mhm,
the typical vampire rules, and the healing was very much that classic trope of um, biting the wrist and healing people with the
mhm.
vampiric blood. Like
Yeah,
and his natural monk speed and agility would just come from that's just pretty stereotypic vampire stuff. So
yeah.
you know,
But we will call that there for this episode of the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast. You've been listening to Dan and Rob talk about all things D&D and Christmas, though very little really about Christmas. We wore hats.
Happy Chrysler.
But I hope everyone has a good Christmas. There'll be another, I believe there's another one between Christmas and New Year. We will
I
have
should think so.
a podcast then as well, all going well. But as usual, give us a like, subscribe, hit that bell icon to get notifications. Go and check us out on all the different social media platforms that we're on. You can find them all in the description. And Until next time, I hope all your dice roll 20s. We'll see you
Even you, Joe, since it's Christmas.
then. Even Joe, but only on Christmas.